What if the calm you've been searching for isn't out there? What if the stillness you long for has always been one breath away? The Buddha once taught, just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, the wise are not moved by praise or blame. So let me ask you, are you the storm or the mountain? Because the world will not quiet itself for you, but you can become quiet enough to hear your own soul. In this world of endless noise, what would it feel like to be untouched by chaos, to walk through fire and not burn, to be spoken against and yet not shaken? This isn't fantasy. It's the practice of the awakened. And today, you are invited to begin. Welcome to Mindful Footsteps, a sanctuary for the seekers, the wounded, the quietly brave. If this message stirred something in you, like this video, leave a comment to tell me what you're ready to release and share it with someone still searching for their center. And if your path feels lonely, subscribe, because here we walk together, and we walk mindfully. Part 1. The real source of inner turbulence, seeing clearly. Let us begin not with noise, but with a whisper, the kind that echoes in your chest, not your ears. Tell me this. Have you ever felt perfectly fine, maybe even peaceful, and then one small thing, a strange glance, a missed message, a careless word, somehow hijacked your entire inner world? Why does that happen? Was it the event itself? Or was it the story your mind told about it? This is the first gate, the first teaching. And if you walk through it, everything changes. The Buddha didn't speak in riddles, he spoke in realities. He said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. So let me ask you again, are you living your life, or are you living your thoughts about life? Imagine your mind as a still pond. Then someone says something cruel. A stone drops. The ripple is real, but what makes the waves crash into your whole being isn't the stone. It's your reaction. You stir the pond. You feed the motion. The task, then, is not to stop stones from falling. It is to stop reacting to every splash. Even the wisest among us once struggled. There's a story, not just a fable, but a lesson etched into the soil of spiritual practice. A man once came to the Buddha, clearly tormented. "Master," he said, "people are speaking badly of me. I can't eat. I can't sleep." The Buddha looked at him with deep compassion and asked, "Do you accept what they say?" The man answered, "No, Master." Then the Buddha smiled and said, "Then why are you letting their words stay in your mind?" Think about that. If someone tried to hand you a burning coal, would you reach out and grab it? Or would you let it fall? Yet every day we grasp at anger. We rehearse arguments in our minds. We cradle old insults like wounds that never heal. Why? Here's something even Elon Musk once hinted at. He said, "The mind is a wild beast. If you can't tame it, it will devour your clarity." Even one of the most powerful men in the world acknowledges that what happens inside us is often more chaotic than anything happening outside. Now pause for a moment. What if you trained your mind the way an elite athlete trains their body? What if your reaction time was no longer dictated by fear or ego, but by insight? What if you stopped playing the victim to other people's words and started becoming the observer of your own peace? Let me ask you directly, who or what has been taking space in your mind, rent-free? Who are you still arguing with in your head? And most of all, do those people even know they still have that power over you? If you feel called to, Write it down. Speak it out loud. Sometimes, naming it is the first release. Because here's the truth. We can't control what others say, but we can control whether we swallow it, whether we digest it, whether we let it become our identity. So I invite you, right now, to pause and reflect. What if, from this moment forward, you only carried what was yours to carry, not the opinions of others, not their pain, not their projections, just your breath, just your calm, just your truth? That, my friend, is the beginning of freedom. Part 2. Detachment, love without chains. The word detachment unsettles people. It makes them think of someone cold, someone distant, someone who has turned their back on the world and said, "I don't care anymore." But what if we've misunderstood it all along? True detachment is not the absence of love. It's the refinement of love. It is the quiet, mature knowing that love can flow, but it must never cling. Let me ask you, have you ever held on so tightly to something, a person, a plan, an identity, that it began to hurt? We don't talk about it enough, but clinging is a form of fear. Fear that if we loosen our grip, we will lose what we love. But what we forget is this: everything changes. Everything leaves. Everything transforms. Buddha knew this well. That's why he taught not to suppress love, but to love in such a way that freedom remains on both sides. There is a beautiful Zen parable passed down through centuries. A young monk and his teacher walked through a muddy path after a storm. When they reached a river, they saw a young woman, stranded, unable to cross. Without a word, the elder monk picked her up, carried her through the current, and set her down gently on the other side. They continued walking in silence. Hours passed. Then finally, the younger monk, visibly disturbed, said, "Master, we monks aren't supposed to touch women. Why did you carry her?" The elder replied calmly, "I set her down by the river hours ago." "Why are you still carrying her? What are you still carrying? A past relationship, a betrayal that lingers in your chest, an outcome you thought was meant to happen, but didn't." Detachment is not abandoning these things. It is releasing them from the grip of expectation. It is setting them down, even if just in your heart, and walking on with lightness. Even the great figures of our world know this truth. When Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years, he said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness behind, I'd still be in prison." That is detachment, not a closing of the heart, but a clearing of the burden. So now I ask you directly, what or who have you been carrying far past the moment you should have set them down? Write it out. Speak it aloud. Let it surface, not to judge it, but to see it clearly. Because here's the truth most people never realize. You can love someone and still let them go. You can grieve something and still release your attachment to it. You can care deeply and still choose peace over possession. So today, let this be your practice. When the past rises up, when expectations grip your chest, when emotions pull you downriver, pause. Place your hand over your heart and say, "I do not need to carry what is already past." Then breathe and walk on. Part 3. The pause, your gateway to peace. There is a sacred space that most people never learn to enter. It is not found in monasteries or mountaintops. It exists in the simplest of places, between what happens and how we choose to respond. That space is called the pause. In that pause lives your power, your wisdom, your freedom. But here's the truth most people miss. Most of us don't live in that space. We live in reaction, in reflex, in old patterns stitched together by fear, pride, memory, and pain. Someone criticizes us, we strike back. Someone disappoints us, we shut down. Life veers off course, we panic, we spiral, we resist. But the wise, they pause. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually chose your reaction instead of being swept away by it? The next time anger rises or judgment flares, try this simple yet profound practice. Name the feeling. Ah, anger is here. And then breathe. Just breathe. You're not the anger. You are the space it's moving through. Like thunder echoing in a vast valley, it will pass if you let it. There's an old teaching shared by spiritual elders across cultures. A grandfather once told his grandson, "When your friend betrays you, don't rush to respond. Wait until your heart is water, not fire. Only then will your words nourish, not destroy." And it's true. Words born from fire burn, but words born from water heal. Even world leaders have spoken of this ancient wisdom. President Barack Obama once said, "Don't react out of fear. Don't respond with your gut. Respond with thought, with reason, with vision." And that's exactly what the pause allows you to do. Now pause with me here. Have you ever said something you wish you could take back? Or made a decision in anger that later brought regret? What would have happened if you had just waited? One breath, one moment, one pause. This is the heart of the Buddhist teaching on mindfulness: to observe, not absorb, to be present, not possessed, to meet the moment, not merge with its chaos. So I offer you this gentle invitation. Today, when something irritates you, don't react. Just stop. Close your eyes if you must. Feel your breath move in and out. Say silently, "This moment is not an emergency." Then respond. Or don't respond at all. And at the end of the day, ask yourself, did I live today by impulse or by intention? Because each pause, no matter how small, is a sacred act. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not hesitation, it's healing. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes who you are. Not a reactor, but a revealer. Not the storm, but the stillness within it. Part 4. Guarding the inner garden. Protecting peace. There comes a time in life, perhaps with age, perhaps with wisdom, when we realize that peace is not a luxury. It is not a bonus. It is not a gift given to us by others. It is something we must protect deliberately, fiercely, gently, because the world is noisy, because people will bring their storms. And if we are not watchful, we let those storms in and mistake them for our own. There is an old story told in quiet corners of Buddhist tradition. A woman lived in a small house at the edge of a restless city. She tended her garden each morning. She lit a candle at dusk. Her laughter was soft, and her words even softer. One summer, her niece came to visit, full of noise, complaints, and heavy energy. After 2 days, the old woman took her by the hand and said, "You are welcome to stay, but please, leave your storm at the door." Now, consider this. What if you began each day by setting that boundary, not just for others, but for yourself? What if your inner life was a garden, not a battlefield? Would you still allow every passing argument, every negative headline, every impatient stranger to trample through it? Peace is not passivity. It is discernment. You do not have to host every emotion that knocks on your door. You do not have to entertain every thought that rises in your mind. You are allowed to ask, "Is this mine to carry?" And often the answer will be, "No." Even the Dalai Lama once said, "Do not let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace." So let me ask you now, who or what have you allowed into your sacred space this week? Was it someone's bitterness, a cruel comment online, your own perfectionism knocking again? You are not being unkind when you protect your peace. You are being responsible with your time, your energy, and your soul. So tomorrow, when the world knocks, listen, but do not let everything in. There is nothing selfish about keeping your garden quiet. After all, flowers only grow where there is light, and light needs space. Part 5. Emotional Immunity. The second arrow. The Buddha once offered a teaching so simple yet so life-altering that it continues to echo through centuries of silence and suffering. He spoke of 2 arrows. The first arrow is what life throws at us: unexpected illness, heartbreak, disappointment, death. These wounds are real. They hurt, and no one, not even the awakened, can avoid them. But the second arrow, that is the one we fire into ourselves. When pain visits, we often invite it to stay. We replay it, overanalyze it, feed it with thoughts like, "This always happens to me. I deserve that. I'll never be okay again." That's the second arrow: resentment, rumination, re-traumatizing ourselves with memory and meaning. Let me ask you, how many times have you suffered long after the moment passed? A loved one speaks a harsh word. That's the first wound. But days later, you're still carrying it, reliving it. You're not just remembering the pain, you're deepening it. That's self-inflicted. There's a story I once heard from a mindfulness teacher in California. A woman in her 70s came to a retreat. During a group session, she shared, "When my husband left me 30 years ago, I thought the pain would end eventually. But I kept reliving that betrayal every time I saw someone holding hands." The teacher gently asked, "And who was hurting you during those moments?" She paused and whispered, "Me." That's the second arrow. So here's the practice. The next time pain rises, and it will, pause. Ask yourself, am I adding suffering to this pain? If the answer is yes, stop, breathe. Let the wave rise, crest, and fall. You don't need to hold it. You only need to feel it and let it go. Because freedom is not the absence of emotion, it's the absence of captivity. Emotional immunity doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't get trapped. It means you recognize what's yours and what your mind is creating. As Viktor Frankl, survivor of the Holocaust, once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. And in our choice lies our growth and our freedom." The second arrow is always a choice. And now, you know you have one. Part 6. Rewriting the story, letting go of old narratives. Each of us walks through life carrying a story, not in our hands, but in our minds. Some of these stories were written long ago, in the quiet of a childhood bedroom, in the echo of a parent's silence, in the aftermath of a love that didn't last. They sound like, "I'm not lovable. I always fail. It's too late for me." But here's the truth. These are not prophecies. They are echoes. They are words spoken long ago, repeated until they became familiar. Not because they were true, but because we never questioned them. The Buddha once said, "With our thoughts, we make the world. If that is so, then with new thoughts, we can remake it." There is a story passed down in the monastic tradition. A man came to an abbot in despair. He had lost his job, his money, his home. He fell to his knees and said, "I have lost everything." The abbot looked at him gently and replied, "No, you have been given space to begin again." Let that settle in. What if your story of failure is actually a story of freedom, not yet rewritten? Let me ask you something personal. If someone else read the story you tell yourself about who you are, would they see the truth, or would they see a wound? You see, the mind is not interested in truth. It is interested in certainty, and often it would rather repeat a painful lie than face the unfamiliar kindness of healing. So here is your challenge, not someday, but now. The next time a harsh inner voice arises, pause, listen, then say softly, "That's just a story. Let me write a kinder one." Say instead, "I am learning. I am becoming. I am still here." And that means something. As the poet Maya Angelou once said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. So don't carry the old one any longer. You are not your past. You are not the chapter others wrote for you. You are the author now. So write again. And this time, write with compassion." Part 7. Living as the Unshakable One, Daily Practice. This path is not a weekend escape. It is not something you try once and check off like a task on your to-do list. This path, the path of peace, of presence, of clarity, is a rhythm, a devotion, a quiet decision you make every morning and sometimes every moment. When you open your eyes, don't rush to the world. Don't reach for your phone, the news, the noise. First, sit, just for a moment. Place one hand over your chest and ask, "What is the weather inside me today?" Not to fix it, not to judge it, just to witness. This is awareness, and awareness is the first step toward freedom. Then, set your intention for the day. Say aloud or silently, "Today, I will not give away my peace." Not to traffic, not to emails, not to gossip, not even to your own impatience. And as you walk through your day, carry 3 sacred tools. 1. The breath, your anchor. When you feel overwhelmed, return to it. Let it slow you down. Let it remind you that this moment is not an emergency. 2. The pause, your shield. Before you speak, before you react, before you assume, stop. Even a single breath can change your direction. 3. The perspective, your guide. When things don't go your way, ask, will this matter in a week? A year? Is it even about me? You'll be amazed how much peace lives on the other side of that question. At the end of the day, don't collapse into shame or regret. Don't replay every misstep. Instead, ask gently, did I live today with wisdom? And if the answer is no, still you rise. Still you walk. Because this practice is not about perfection. It's about return. There's a phrase I once heard from a monk who had lived through war and exile. He said, "Every morning I fall, and every morning I stand again." That is my practice. You don't become unshakable overnight. You become unshakable every time you choose not to be shaken. In a world that rewards reaction, you will become the rare presence that radiates stillness, and others will feel it. They won't know why, but they'll soften in your presence, because stillness speaks, and your life, just as it is, can become its voice. Conclusion. A final blessing. Dear soul, you were never meant to live at the mercy of storms. You were not born to be tossed by opinions, undone by moments, or defined by wounds. You are here to remember, to walk softly, yes, but with power, to breathe deeply, not to escape, but to anchor, to live, not as a reaction to the world, but as a response to something much greater, something still and sacred within you. As the Tao says, The master remains unmoved. He is like a mountain. Winds blow, yet he does not stir. The world will not stop spinning, but you, in your silence, can become the still point at the center of it all. So when the noise rises, return. When the doubts come, breathe. When the ache whispers, listen. But don't follow. Go gently. Go wisely. And remember, the strength you seek was never lost. It was always waiting in you.